welcome to the Ignorance Project. Today, I'm very, very, very excited to have my second mom with me. Hi, Auntie Lori.
Hi.
Okay. So today we're going to be talking about a few different things, but mostly domestic abuse. And Auntie Lori, do you mind just introducing yourself and you're talking about your role so that we can kick off the conversation?
Sure. My name is Lori Wilson, and I am, by profession, I am a victim advocate. I work for our local county prosecutor's office here in the state of Washington. And specifically, I'm working with domestic violence cases and some sexual assault cases as well.
Okay, thank you. So to kick it off, I gave you some background on why I asked you to do this, but I left out a part because I just want to talk about it real time.
Okay.
So Gabby Petito has been a very, very common phrase, a well-known person in the news right now because she recently went missing. They did find her body, and they talked about some of the events that led up to her going missing, which included someone calling the cops because they saw a domestic dispute between her and her boyfriend, and her being interviewed by the cops. If you go look, there's some clips of that encounter. And I actually ended up having a conversation in a group chat that I'm in about this case from the day that we found out it was happening, which was just kind of sad and crazy because we knew that she and her boyfriend had this domestic dispute to the day that she was found. So after she was found, someone in the chat mentioned, I feel really, I probably feel a little bit worse about this than I typically would because it's a white woman and a white man potentially murdered her because, he hasn't been found to confirm that, even though it looks like that's what happened. And it came up, well, what about Black women? Because Black women go missing all the time. Black women are domestically abused all the time, but it's not spoken of as frequently as white women. And their response was, well, when it happens to Black women, it's usually something regarding like a drug deal or there's more of a self-cause that leads to that, which is a huge misconception. And coming out of just myself and trying to be a little bit more open to why someone might have that view, although I disagree with it, possibly because that's how the media portrays us a lot, as being drug dealers and kind of self-harming ourselves because of the situations that we put ourselves in. So missing white women syndrome has been a big topic. And I kind of felt like this all ties in because we hear a lot about white women. We get a lot of sympathy in the media about white women, but we don't hear that same justice about Black women or other women of color.
Right. Yes, and that's true. That's true. And unfortunately, that viewpoint may be seen, part of it may be due to media coverage, and you just don't get the coverage for women of color that have gone missing or that are abused in their relationships. But just putting it frankly, domestic violence is not a crime that happens only within white families or Black families or any other demographic in society. It is pervasive throughout every aspect of society. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic level is, what your race is. It happens also within same-sex relationships. You don't hear a lot about that.
Right.
Part of the reason you may not hear a lot about it is that there may not be as much reporting that's done by victims of domestic violence in other than the predominant culture.
Oh,
Culturally, there are a lot of, in people of color, there are a lot of cultures that have been taught that we keep family problems in the home. We deal with things within the home. We don't involve outside people in our family business. And we certainly don't call the police for many different reasons. we all know what's going on as far as law enforcement and the opinions toward law enforcement right now in our society here. But that has been ongoing. Within the Black family, it has always been said, you keep things within the family.
Right.
You don't put your business in the street, and you certainly don't call the law.
Family business is family business.
It's family business. And that also goes into sexual assault as well. Sexual assault is not reported as much because it's seen as a family problem. You don't involve others in the family business. But domestic violence goes on in every level of society and in every race. You just may not hear about it as much.
Thank you for clearing that up. And I did look up a few things just in anticipation of this conversation that we were having. But I will say, even with what we've said so far, I was very tunnel visioned with what I researched, right? Because I was thinking, because I had that conversation like Black woman, I was very much focused on Black women. But you said something a little bit before we talked about Indigenous women.
Right. Absolutely. And this is one of the most tragic things that is not talked about every day on the news. You may hear about missing white women. You might occasionally hear about missing Black women. What you do not hear about on national media is missing and murdered Indigenous women. There are so many. I don't have the statistics because we just started talking about this. They go missing a lot. And we have, in the state of Washington, we have a huge Native population, and most of our land is Indian land. So we have a lot of different tribes, and now lately there has been a focus on missing and murdered Indigenous women. And it's an easy Google away. Just Google it, and it's something that you just don't hear about through mainstream. But there are a lot of Indigenous women that go missing. No one is searching for them, and no one seems to know about these crimes until it is brought to the attention of someone. And a lot of that, they have local law enforcement for the tribes. So they're not our regular county sheriffs or city police officers.
Okay.
So we may not hear about it because it's being handled internally within the tribe. Or federally, because the Native lands are also governed by federal law enforcement. So, but it's a huge problem that is just now being talked about, that there are so many missing Indigenous women.
I would love for us to have another conversation about that, where we could go when I give you a heads up.
Yes,
we can go.
Yes, we can certainly talk about that.
Yeah, that's wow. I never even thought about that. Okay, so kind of transitioning more into the whole domestic abuse conversation. I know when I first reached out to you about this and I asked if we could talk, you said, do you want to talk about men or women? And that floored me because I never considered men. Again, very tunnel visioned. I'm thinking about women being victims. But looking it up, I'm seeing 1 in 3 women will be victimized physically, and 1 in 4 men.
Yes. Right.
So can we talk about that a little bit? When men are in domestic abuse situations, what does that typically look like?
It looks different in a couple of different ways. If they're being abused by a female partner, that's what you would see more often. But again, you see a lot in same-sex relationships as well. But it looks the same as female abuse. The tactics that are used are the same. There is intimidation and coercion. It's about domestic violence starts with power and control. Okay. It may not even start with physical violence. There may be more of emotional abuse, verbal abuse, like I said, threats and coercion, economic abuse happens a lot, where they're either not allowed to work, or if you're allowed to get a job, then the job is sabotaged. The partner comes and is either calling all the time, or they show up, or they don't allow you to go to work, or you're not allowed to have control of any money. The dominant partner controls all the money, all the finances. Everything is in their name. And this goes, and I'm not saying the man or the woman, because it's the same.
Wow. I never considered that.
Yeah, it can happen for either sex. It really doesn't matter. Using the children, against the partner, controlling them with, I'll take the kids away, or being so controlling as far as, even if they're trying to co-parent, and they're not together as a couple, they still can affect, visitation, and there's threats and coercion as far as either allowing visitation or withholding the children from the other partner, just as a tactic to intimidate, scare, and just in other ways, just emotionally abuse that person.
Right.
Physical violence, if it's a woman to a man, just physically, men tend to be stronger than women. So women use weapons.
Oh, okay.
Women use cars. Women will run you over with the car.
Okay.
Something more of a weapon, because in a physical fight, typically the man is going to have more physical strength than a woman. So a woman will use a weapon. Now, not saying that men don't use weapons, because they absolutely do. Cases that I see every day, stabbings and shootings, being hit with things, being run over by cars.
Wow.
Just, any weapon that they can get their hands on. It can go both ways. But with women, typically, it's not going to be just a physical fight between the two, because men tend to be stronger. So a woman will typically pick up a weapon if they're planning to abuse their partner.
Thanks for clarifying that, because when I think of abuse, physical abuse, the other thing I think of is someone physically harming you, like a fight, like you said.
Yeah.
And I was watching an episode of Black Love probably about a year ago with a same-sex couple, two men. And one of the comments that they made was, fighting is different when you're in a same-sex relationship, because if you're in a male-female relationship, you typically will have an argument, right? But when you're in a same-sex relationship, they were saying that it can get physical faster. But I never really related that physical encounter to being abusive, or having the potential to become abusive. Okay, so what's the craziest, the most outlandish case that you've seen with the same-sex couple?
Wow. After all these years, there's just so many. I don't know, just because with the level of violence, there, within a same-sex couple, I can't think of anything specific, but I've seen some pretty horrific things, just in general, where people do really awful things to their partners, just anything they can to physically hurt them. I had a lady that was tied up to the refrigerator.
Goodness.
Trapped in a hotel room, tied to the refrigerator, and then beaten over the head with a broken glass bottle.
Oh my goodness.
With a broken glass beer bottle.
Wow.
Then, and for further intimidation of that person, of that lady, he took her 12-year-old daughter into the bathroom and raped her.
Wow.
So, I mean, things that people do to each other are horrible. And some of that is done in the name of love, believe it or not. In a lot of times, domestic abusers will make their victim feel like, and they will tell them flat out, you made me do this. You caused me to do this. And we'll ask them, why did you make me do this to you? So they place blame on the person that they have just assaulted. Or they will minimize the abuse and say, well, no, I didn't do that to you. And then just do complete gaslighting. I don't know if you're familiar with gaslighting. Okay. If for people who are not familiar with gaslighting, it actually comes from the movie Gaslight, where she's made to feel like she's crazy and just telling her things. No, that didn't really happen. You must be crazy. That didn't really happen. That happens a lot in abusive relationships. They minimize the abuse and what has happened, but also tell them and make them feel like they're crazy and tell other people that, see, look at how she's acting. She's crazy. This is what I have to deal with because she's crazy. I was only trying to calm her down because you see how she's acting now? She's the one that's crazy. They place the blame completely on the person that they have just assaulted.
Wow. So what's some advice that you would give to, as far as like warning signs go for recognizing this type of behavior?
For the person involved or for their friends and family?
Can we do both?
We can do both. For the person involved, with women especially, follow your instincts. Notice the red flags. Notice things that happen, because sometimes it doesn't start with physical violence. It may start with name calling or, some abusive language or something, or some intimidation or something, control of things that you should have control over, like what you wear and when you eat and where you go and whether or not you're allowed to work, whether you're allowed to have finances under your own control. Do you have a job, but you have to give the money to your partner? Are you allowed to have full autonomy with where you go? Listen to your instincts about what's happening in your relationship. If something feels just off and you feel like you are no longer having control over your own self, these are warning signs to look for. And if things begin to escalate to violence that's not a bad assault first, it may be a push, it may be a shove, something like that, a pulling of the hair, it may be a slap in the face. Violence tends to escalate over time. Disrespect, the ultimate in disrespect for me is spitting. And domestic abusers will always spit on their victims. Really? Always. They will spit on their victims.
Because it's so disrespectful.
Disrespectful. It is belittling.
Yeah.
It shows that they have no value. And that's something that is extremely common. They will spit on their victims.
Wow.
One of the most lethal activities that comes in a physical assault is strangulation. People sometimes minimize just how serious it is, but if someone puts their hand on your throat, either to restrict your blood flow or your breathing, that is the ultimate in a control mechanism, because they're controlling whether you breathe, and that controls whether you live or die.
Oh my goodness.
With strangulation, you can kill someone very, very quickly. They can have brain damage extremely quickly. There are physical symptoms that happen on the inside that the person may not even be aware of. Police officers now are trained and taught the symptoms to look for when they're talking to someone who has said that they have been strangled. Most of the time people will say choked. Choking is not the appropriate term, because you choke on food. Okay. You choke on food. Something that gets obstructed on its way down means you are choking. Right. Strangulation is the act of cutting off blood flow and your air. Okay. It impedes your ability to breathe. And if you see someone who says, oh, well, all he did was choke me, and I didn't pass out, that is, strangulation is one of the most serious signs of lethality that could be coming, because you have damage, you have internal damage that can happen to your airway and your blood vessels, everything else on the inside. It's also the ultimate in control tactics. Right. That you will hear people say, he just wanted me to be quiet. He kept telling me to shut up. So basically, in his mind, he's going to make her shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the ultimate in control, is he is deciding, and I'm saying he in a general sense.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this does happen with men and women,
Right.
but typically it is the men who are stronger physically and are strangling women.
Okay.
And it's a matter of control to make them be quiet.
That's heavy. Okay, what about the family and friends of a potential victim? What should they be looking for?
Family and friends, one of the biggest tactics used is isolation. So if your family member is suddenly isolated from you, no longer comes around, no longer stays in contact, and there's always an excuse. Well, we're not available this weekend. We can't come to that family event. Or I know I don't call you as much as I used to. We're just really, really busy. And eventually the contact gets less and less. Look for signs of isolation. Okay. Obviously, when you're seeing the person, look for any signs of physical assault. Look for injuries that don't make sense, and the excuses that come with, oh gosh, how did you get that black eye? Oh, well, I fell over the couch. I fell over the back of the couch. Ask questions. Ask questions. Ask questions when you're in a safe environment. Do not ask questions around the partner.
That's a good point. What about texting? Yeah. What about texting somebody a question?
Texting someone, have a safe word.
Okay.
Have a secret code. People have them with their kids all the time too. Yeah. It's like, okay, here's your safe word if a stranger is trying to take you or something. Do the same thing. If you know that your family member or friend or girlfriend or something is in a bad situation, you know that they're in an abusive relationship and they're not ready to leave yet, be supportive of them. Let them know that you will be there for them when they are ready. That's one of the big things. And then develop a safe word with them. If you text me, order me a pizza, that means call 911, or something, or just whatever they come up with, some sort of a signal that will tell them to call for help for that person, because it means they're in a situation that they cannot call for themselves. And be supportive. It's hard because sometimes you will see a domestic abuse survivor go back to that partner over and over. Statistics say that someone who's experiencing an abusive relationship will leave that relationship on an average of 7 times before they stay gone the final time. So they will try to leave, but sometimes they go back through coercion from the abuser, or feeling sorry for the abuser, or still having feelings for them. They still love that person. They might still feel like they love that person and they want to be with them, and that person just needs help. They need, mental health treatment, or they need, drug treatment or something. Substance abuse does not cause domestic violence. Okay. Let's be clear about that. Drugs and alcohol do not cause domestic violence. Okay. If someone says, well, that he only hits me when he's been drinking, it's the alcohol. It's not the alcohol. Alcohol only lowers your inhibitions and allows you to do something that you probably were wanting to do anyway. And it lowers your inhibitions, and so you act on that. Alcohol does not cause domestic violence, and neither do drugs. So, but for family and friends, just be supportive, develop a system, develop a safe word with that person, and let them know that you're there when they're ready, when they're finally ready.
All right. Thanks for that advice, because I always picture, someone going back and me thinking like, there's nothing I can do. But changing that mindset too, and saying, you know what, it's probably going to take time before they're ready, and being open and understanding of that, empathetic about that.
And hopefully they will be ready before it becomes lethal. And sadly, sometimes they never make it out of that relationship. The most dangerous time of all for someone who is in an abusive relationship is when they're trying to leave.
Yeah.
That's the most dangerous time of all. And if they have sought an order of protection against the person, that is another time where they are in extreme danger. So safety plans need to be in place when they decide to leave. There are resources within just about every community, domestic violence resources, so that they can develop a plan if they need to get away and when they decide to leave, so they can have something in place where that person cannot find them. Because that becomes, that's when it's most lethal, is when they're getting ready to leave.
Right. So let me ask you this. If you have a friend and, you see them in this relationship, but you're scared too, right? That's probably when you would reach out to someone like that. Like, I don't feel comfortable with you staying with me, but I want to make sure that we're getting you the help that you need. So they call somebody locally?
Yes, okay. They can. Because yes, that's a real thing. Because if an abuser is looking for that person, looking for their partner, if they know the family members, if they know the friends, that's where they're coming first. And that does make people reluctant to open their homes or be available, to that victim who may need to get away. And they may have to make the hard decision to go somewhere completely anonymous where they're not with family and friends, even whether it be a shelter or relocating to somewhere else. Another thing that family and friends can do is, if the person has gotten away and they've moved to somewhere else, or they've changed their phone number or something, don't give the information to the abuser.
Okay.
Sometimes people, family members especially, feel like they're being helpful. Our niece is having trouble in her relationship, and he's such a good guy, and we really like him. He's so sad. And they go ahead and give the new information to the abuser, and without thinking that they're doing any harm.
Right.
So it's when people leave these relationships, they have to be very careful who they give their new information to. It's too bad. But in order to save their life, sometimes they have to almost disconnect themselves from some family and friends that might give that information away without knowing the harm that they're doing.
Okay. Thank you. Great advice. So I know you talked about a wheel of...
Yes, the power and control.
The power and control. I should have written that down.
That's okay. Because you know what? Domestic abuse can be seen as a wheel. Okay. There's a cycle, the cycle of domestic violence. There's basically 4 areas that go in the cycle of domestic violence, right? Okay. First of all, there is, it starts with the tension, the period of tension in the relationship. There may be some arguments, things like that. So there's tension. The next stage goes to a physical event. There is physical harm. There's an assault that happens. There's property damage, something like that. There is an event. After that, there may be police involved. There may not. Not everybody calls the police when something happens within their home. After that event, then there's the honeymoon stage, where the abuser may be sorry and they want to reconcile, and this will never happen again. And there's promises made, and then it's everything is wonderful. They're buying gifts. Everything is like it was at the beginning of the relationship. It's the honeymoon period. And then there's a period of calm after that. So things go back to normal. Everything is fine. And then it goes right back into the cycle. After a while, there becomes tension again. Tension begins to build. There begins to be arguments. Then there's another physical event. Then there's the honeymoon period. Then there's the period of calm. That is the cycle of violence. Okay. That's a little different than the power. And the power and control wheel does give specific tactics that abusers use. And it revolves within physical and sexual abuse, because sexual abuse within families it's part of domestic violence. Part of the assaults might be sexual assaults. Okay. And it's a matter of control, because if you are sexually assaulted within your relationship, it's another physical assault. but it has become sexual, which adds another layer to it.
Right.
Because then your body has been violated. There's a chance of sexually transmitted infections. There's a chance of pregnancy. There's a chance of physical injuries to the genital area. There's so much that's involved in sexual assault, but it's used for control. There becomes reproductive coercion.
Okay.
Reproductive abuse could be forced pregnancy. It could be withholding access to contraception. It could be if the person refuses to wear condoms, even if their partner wants them to, and they refuse to wear condoms, then if she happens to end up pregnant, then she could be assaulted, forced to lose the baby, or on the flip side, forced to go get an abortion, whether she wants to or not. If you refuse to wear condoms and then there's a sexually transmitted infection, she may be physically assaulted and blamed for that, accused of cheating when it's really him that brought it to her. There's a lot that becomes involved with a sexual assault,
right?
Not just the physical assault.
And there's this new trend, there's a phrase for it that I can't remember, like slipping the condom off in the middle of sex. That's also
a term for that.
Yeah, there's a term. I have to look it up, but I know that's also a form of sexual assault.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You have a right to control what goes on with your body sexually. And as a matter of control, if your partner takes that away from you, then that is a sexual assault. In the power and control wheel, there's different tactics used. They use intimidation. They just make you afraid. Right. Certain looks that might be given, certain gestures that might be given, just destroying property, abusing pets, abusing animals is a big one. It's a big one. Right. And threatening to abuse the animals that that person loves is huge. If they threaten your dog, you're going to do whatever they say. So it's, that's huge. So there's that coercion piece and the intimidation piece. Emotional abuse. They put you down, call you names, tell you you're stupid, tell everyone else that you're stupid, make you think you're crazy, different things, playing mind games, making her feel guilty. Isolation, keep you away from family and friends. Your circle becomes so small that you have no one to depend on but that partner, and that's exactly how they want it. Right. Because then they're in control of absolutely everything that happens in your life. They minimize, deny, blame, minimize the abuse, deny that it happened at all. It's like, you're crazy. I didn't do that to you. What are you talking about? There's something wrong with you. I would never do that to you. Or why did you make me do that to you? You know how to push my buttons. If you would just do that, if you would just do what I tell you, or if you would just keep your mouth shut, you talk too much, then this wouldn't happen. This is on you. You brought this on yourself. That happens a lot. They do threaten with the children. The children are a big one. If your children are being threatened, obviously you're going to do whatever that person tells you. Or if they're threatening to take them away. A lot of times, if there's the also financial control going on, if you're not allowed to have a job, there's nothing in your name, your partner has a good job and can hire an attorney, then if you end up in family court, you have no one. They have this attorney who is practicing the same tactics against you as your abusive partner, the intimidation and things. Sometimes it's done by their attorney as well. So the economic abuse is huge too. It's a whole wheel of power and control, and it comes back to being in control of every aspect of your partner's life, taking away all sense of autonomy, making them feel they have nothing, they have no one other than that abusive partner, which is part of the reasons a lot of times that they go back.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I can understand that. Let me ask you this. I don't know how to phrase this. Okay. Have you seen abusers go through any type of program where they become reformed?
There are, within the criminal justice system, part of what happens is that they are ordered to do domestic violence treatment. They're ordered to do an assessment that shows the propensity for, some of these power and control behaviors and things like that, and then go through a period of counseling and individual counseling, group counseling, and classes, things like that. Does it work? I don't know.
Okay.
People can change. I will not say that people do not have the ability to change. It's a matter of if they want to change. If this is behavior that they want to change and do not want to remain the same type of person that they have been, sure, it can be effective. Have I seen it? I would say not as much as I have seen immediate recidivism and coming back with not necessarily the same partner, but different. A lot of times we see the same people over and over again on both sides. We see defendants that have multiple cases over the years because they don't change their behavior. It might just be a different person that they victimized this time. And we also see prior domestic violence victims that have a new partner that treats them in the same way. Domestic abusers know how to target people. They pick their victims. They know how to target vulnerable people that will be susceptible to the tactics that they use. They know how to pick them.
Wow.
Yeah. It's more rare that you see someone come through the system one time and never, ever, ever return because they have either left that person and never ever are around them again. Occasionally we will see that, but it's much less common than the people that we see over and over again.
I never thought about that either. I think about it being a case with a person and then like that's it, it's the next person. But I
had a case where one of my first cases back when I started here 18 years ago, she was involved with the father of her children, and it was an abusive relationship. And I had at least one case per year with her, probably for the next 10 years. And it got to where she wouldn't talk to anybody else in the office. She knew she had my phone number. She would call me up and say, sorry, it's happened again. And I'm back again. And of course, I'm there for her, and I'm wanting to support her and give her help in trying to move forward. And eventually she did get away from him. She did. And which is more difficult when there are children involved, of course, because he still has rights for seeing the children too.
That's interesting too.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Wow.
Family court, that's a whole different discussion.
different conversation. Okay. Well, Auntie Lori, thank you so much for talking to me. This was such an insightful conversation.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Before we finish, I do want to offer up a resource and tell anyone that may be in an unsafe situation, there are resources available in just about every community. If you're not aware of where they are, you can contact the National Domestic Violence Helpline. That website is www.thehotline.org, THEHOTLINE.org, thehotline.org. And that phone number is 1-800-799-SAFE. So 1-800-799-7233. Please reach out for help. It is available.
I will definitely make sure that I post that at the end of the video. Thank you so much. And thank you for being an advocate. Like the work that you do is amazing. Yeah. So thanks for being willing to speak about
I love what I do.
Yeah, I know. You can see that. You can see when someone's passionate about the work that they do, and you see that in you.
And there's so much more, but we only have a limited time. So
you'll be back.